In this final installment of our mini-series on oral transmission in the Bible, we'll take a look at some of the practical implications of what we've learned. If much of the Bible was composed in an oral environment, what does that mean in terms of our understanding of the text? We'll look at some specific examples shortly, but before we do, we need to extend a thesis. Modern people in literate societies tend to be concerned with precision in transmission. For this reason, the doctrine of inerrancy of the Bible, as formulated by certain parties, tends to assume that the inspiration and authorship of the Bible went something like this.
Matthew,
Yes, Lord?
I want you to write a gospel.
Yes, Lord. I'll do that right away.
Hey,
Yes, Lord?
where do you think you're going?
I'm obeying your command to write a gospel.
Sit down. We're doing this my way. Get your pen ready. Write the word "the."
The
Now write the word "book."
book?
Have you got that? Read it back to be sure.
The book?
Good, you haven't fouled up yet. Now write "of."
By?
No! Get it right. I said "of."
Yes, Lord.
That's somewhat exaggerated, but it's not too far from what they say in principle. For many theorists like certain people, the Bible is like a fax from heaven, divinely dictated down to the exact word. But there's a problem with that idea, encapsulated by a quote I often use from Jocelyn Small's book, Wax Tablets of the Mind. What's this mean for us in practical terms? Well, it means that in oral transmission, a certain degree of variability in wording will be the norm. It doesn't matter to a person in an oral-based society if the exact words aren't transmitted. What matters more is that the idea or substance gets across accurately. It also means that certain things which seem odd to a reader of the text make sense when we recognize that they are designed for a listener of the story. Let's have a look at some examples of how oral transmission affected the composition of the Bible. Everyone knows this story, and it contains two illustrative examples of how oral transmission affects the way the story is told. Here the reader is introduced to David and his father Jesse. The modern reader, because of this, gets a little confused when, a chapter later, they're introduced to David and Jesse again. That seems kind of odd, until we realize that originally the stories in 1 Samuel were originally not part of a written document, but were part of a collection of oral accounts which would have originally been told separately. Another interesting solution to a claimed problem is found here, where David kills Goliath. According to critics, there's a problem here because it looks like David kills Goliath twice, once with a stone in 1750 and once with a sword in 1751. As you can see, there's a sort of structure. It's a sort of poetic memorization device designed to help the reader remember the story. And so the parallel words slew him, followed by sword, followed by, that doesn't match, you say? Guess again. Put those words in Hebrew. Ah, then we have that last element, David himself. And so we have 4 steps up, 4 steps down. What that means is, it misses the point to ask a question like, did he kill Goliath with the stone or the sword? In practical terms, obviously, the entire attack, stone and sword, ultimately contributed to Goliath's death. But the story had been constructed in a way that made it easy for people to remember. And as a result of that artificial structure, we get something that uncritical modern readers assume must be a contradiction. The other examples we'll give come from the New Testament, and will serve as typical for several other examples that could be used. If you place parallel passages from different Gospels side by side, it becomes pretty clear that they are not word-for-word copies of each other. This is the clearest example of the sort of thing Jocelyn Small was referring to when she said it was not the words but the gist that counted in transmission. Modern critics hold such accounts side by side and speculate about everything from developments in theology to outright contradictions. But there's really only one explanation necessary most of the time, and that's that most of the variations are due to oral transmission. That concludes this mini-series, but you can be sure we'll return to oral transmission as a factor in explaining biblical issues in the future. Theirs was a world of sound and hearing, far more than it was a world of text and reading, and it's clear that the biblical text reflects that.